Moving house is considered to be one of the most stressful things to do in people's lives, but it can be even harder when you're downsizing from a large house into a smaller property. Not only the decluttering of your stuff, but the emotions connected to leaving your home have a huge impact. Well, we have great news because today we have a fantastic guest, lovely friend and colleague, Joe Jacob, who helps elderly people downsize into retirement apartments.
You're listening to the Declutter Hub podcast, bringing you tried and tested, no-nonsense tips and advice from the leading experts in decluttering and organising your home. Now here's your host, Leslie Spellman.
Hello and welcome, listeners. I'm Leslie. We're delighted you're here to join us as part of your decluttering journey. So whether you're brand new today or have been listening in for ages, we want to say thank you so much for being here. It means so much to Ingrid and I that you turn up every week to listen to and support us while we talk all things decluttering and organising. We'd love to help more people with their quest for a clutter-free home, and our podcast is a fantastic way for people to be inspired to take action. We have a favour to ask. If you like what you hear, be sure to hit the follow, subscribe, or like button on your podcast player. Share us with your friends or share your thoughts on the podcast by leaving a review. Welcome, Joe, back to our podcast. Now, you have been on our podcast before, Joe, right? 5 years ago, did we say?
I know, it was about photograph organising then. So, it's a long time ago. So lovely to be back. Thank you for having me.
I know. So Ingrid and I were talking about, it's been a while since we've talked about downsizing on the podcast. And we know you work a lot with, is it Senior Move Partnership that you work a lot with? And so Tell us a little bit about that and what you do.
So basically, I've been a professional organiser for a very long time now already. And prior to starting with the Senior Move Partnership, which was about 7 years ago, I was helping people, helping them stage their homes for sale and helping with moving. But moving into alongside the Senior Move Partnership has really specialised in moving people into retirement apartments, where the developers pay the Senior Move Partnership for a certain amount of package hours that they would get a specialist like us and to go in. And that could be, literally 6 hours where we try to work our magic in 6 hours, or up to managing the entire move. So just sort of really enjoying specialising in that and the whole kind of mindset of moving and downsizing and what that entails, really.
And it must be a really nice thing for them to have. I mean, obviously anybody can get a professional organizer to help at any point with any kind of moves, whether that's a move into a retirement property or a downsize earlier in life. But I think to have that as part of your package, and so you've got this thing without even thinking about needing it or wanting it, is just so fabulous. So what do you think are the benefits of downsizing? So you've done a lot of downsizing in your time with people across all walks of life. So why are people downsizing? Do you think it's increasing more? Is it just when people are trying to get equity out of their home? How's it all working and what are the benefits?
There are various reasons that I come across when people are downsizing. It can be a health reason that they need to move to it's mainly needing to move to a smaller property, which is what downsizing is. So it could be, health benefits or health requirements. It could be a bereavement, just a geography change. They need to be closer to, a more supportive family member or something like that. And also, these large houses, they just become, there's a lot of hard work involved in maintaining a large home. And I think a lot of times people want to move to sort of preempt that. I cannot tell you how many homes I've walked into, and a typical home would be, it's 4 or 5 bedroom, there's a double garage, there's 2 sheds full of tools, and there's an attic, and they've raised their families, they've had grandchildren come, but now it's just that the garden's too much, there's just too much stuff, or there's been a bereavement, and they just think, now we need to move. But you sit in one of these sort of large homes and you look at the floor plan of a 1-2 bed apartment, and it literally is, where do we start? And that's when we walk in and with a plan, or, I come in and this is how we do it. And it's, does feel overwhelming for them. But, my role is just to make that, like, this is the plan of action. This is how we're going to do it. And I'm here to support you. And it's all doable. I've moved a lady who had 8 acres of land. I can't tell you how many outbuildings, 2 kitchens and 7 bedrooms. And I moved her into a 2-bedroom apartment within 30 hours. If I can do that, I can move anyone as far as I'm concerned. And I can move
tell us about
it.
Yeah, no, and that's really interesting, because that must have been, so what we're going to do really with this podcast is because there's 2 sides to this. There's the practical side of things, which is really about space and management of stuff. But then there's a huge part that comes before that, which is the emotional wrench of moving away from a home that you've had for decades, probably. As you say, the grief might come into it, bereavement might come into it. There might be circumstances that mean that it's a need for you to actually move. These are all big emotional pulls, because some of these decisions are not necessarily yours. Like, often when we're moving house, we're making a decision to right size, to go crossways, to go upwards, to all of these things. But downsizing is a different thing. So it might be something that certainly it's something that a lot of people welcome. Of course it is. But some people are going to be a little bit nervous about that process. I know it's interesting really as well, because my mum died like 19 years ago. She and my dad lived in a kind of, not a large house, but just like a 3-bed house. And my dad wanted to move from where they lived over to be near me. And our area is just that little bit more expensive than where he was. And so he didn't have a choice. He had to go into a retirement property because that's all that he could afford. And I think at the time he was kind of maybe 60-ish, something like that. But now he's the oldest person in his retirement property, because they've taken the parameters of that down to 55, which scares me a lot, if I'm honest, being a 55-year-old, that there's a thought that I might go into a retirement property. So that's interesting in itself as well, that people at 55 are making the decision to downsize as well. And obviously there in the UK, retirement properties are typically much more cost effective than standard flats, aren't they, Joe? So I think that's really interesting as well. But let's dig into that a little bit. Let's talk about your lady. I mean, I don't want you to go into details because that's her personal information, but how did you manage the emotional side of moving somebody from such a large property with potentially so much stuff that went along with that into such a small place?
That one was slightly easier because she was very ready. She had 4 children, but literally scattered around the world. I think she had 2 in the UK, but not nearby. The rest were Australia and America. She was ready. Her husband was in a care home, so she wanted to move to the same retirement apartment, and then the care home was next door. So for her, I don't know if it was a monetary reason. I don't, ask sort of too many personal questions, but she was ready to go, but she was totally and utterly overwhelmed because, the volume of items, and I can never really show that I feel overwhelmed. But I remember just driving home and thinking, right, this is going to be a challenge. You've got 2 kitchens because the house was so large. There are 2 kitchens. And, so you just have to take everything back and just step down and break down the process. And once they're involved in that, then the emotions, it doesn't seem so overwhelming when they're obviously involved in all the choices. When we're not just coming in and saying, well, that's not going to fit. Well, that's not going to work. We're going to get house clearance come in and just take it all away in front of you. It's never like that. It's always a very, very supportive role. It's also very interesting when there are family involved, because often it's almost like I feel like a little bit of a referee, because you'll have mainly the daughter and the mum sort of clashing. Come on, mum, you don't need that. What are you talking? And then the mum gets defensive. She doesn't want to be told, so I'm kind of like, why don't you go upstairs and have a look at the linen and I'll just carry on the kitchen with your mum, because I am emotionally detached. It's not my parent, obviously. And I can kind of stop that clashing, because that's a real barrier as well. The people that are downsizing, they don't really want to be told. 9 times out of 10, they maybe don't want to be don't want to be moving, and they don't want to feel that this is all being put upon them and they have to do it a certain way. So it's just kind of talking them through the process, but really understanding that it is a wrench. But it's mainly then talking nothing but the benefits of it. There won't be a big garden to maintain. There won't be possibly the stairs to worry about. Think of the community that you're going to be, moving to, or if they're moving not to a retirement apartment, but they're moving to just a smaller home, but to be near family, then think of all the, the extra, time you're going to have with grandchildren or anything like that. So it's really focusing on the positives of it.
And there are many, many positives. And, just talk about my father-in-law, not my dad, just moved him. He's in a bungalow, sort of a dormer bungalow, and we've just moved him downstairs into a downstairs bathroom and bedroom for similar reasons. His mobility is impaired. But just that movement, it's ready for him to move. And I'll just do another week. I'll just do another week upstairs. Just I mean, it's an emotional wrench to admit to yourself and those around you that this is something that you can no longer do, which is, so it's really hard, and it's something that needs to be dealt with carefully. And so it's great that, we as professional organisers can be emotionally detached from that and steer things in the right direction, because family members often are more about the practicalities of the side of things. Of course, they understand the emotional side of it. That's not what I'm saying. But when it comes down to it and time's up against it, you're up against time, then it is going to be like, we need to get this done because you've got to move in 2 weeks or whatever that is. And so time pressure, and we're used to that sort of stuff as professionals. So it's definitely worth getting a third party involved, I would say, in that downsize, if possible. I wanted to talk a bit about how do people understand, and how do you get across the kind of volume side of things? Because I think one of the things that I've always done when I've been working with people downsizing, it's not just elderly people, we're talking a lot about elderly people here because that's Jo's experience at the moment. You've done more work with retirees more recently. But in some ways, downsizing takes away some of the decision making, in my opinion, because you can't make a decision to keep something because it just does not fit. And so, where you stay in your home and it belongs in your home and the home is not changing, it was there before. So in principle, it can stay afterwards if need be. But when downsizing, that's not the case. How do you go about that kind of spatial side of things and understanding the restrictions on space?
So the thing that works the best is to create a floor plan. I have software, on my laptop, and I get the floor plan of either the new house or the new apartment, and then measure their furniture. It's incredibly powerful. Yes, I can see right now that you have, a drawing room, you have a snug, you have a dining room with, 8 chairs around, and you've hosted, all these not hundreds of Christmases, but all these Christmases. But in your new place, of course, you won't have to worry about that. It's focusing on those positives there, because for them, they're like, well, I need 10 Pyrex dishes and I need a huge dining table because I'd always hosted Christmas. And it's sort of that accepting of looking at the floor plan. Okay, well, we can fit a smaller table with 4 chairs in. I had a lady that was moving to a 1-bedroom, and she was adamant she was going to take 3 sofas. And I did it on the floor plan. It was to show her that that's blocking up a door. And this is going to look like a doctor's waiting room, with these, all these sofas. And to sort of to convince her, well, they're not going to fit. And of course, when you do have visitors, you can go down to the lounge in the area, or you can go out to a restaurant and not worry about hosting. And it's like focusing all the benefits of it, but it's really creating that floor plan. And when they see, yes, I understand that right now you have 10 small tables with lamps on all around your home, but let's get one in the hallway so that in the winter you can always leave a light on if you're, out. And then let's have one in the living room and then one over here, but you don't need 10. And also 10 aren't going to fit. So therefore that leads to, which are your favorite ones? And I'll put them on the floor plan. And then that automatically creates an inventory of items to, I always say, move on and not dispose, because the word dispose is quite upsetting to people, obviously. So let's like, where are these items going to go? And that creates then the next stage of downsizing. But number one is the floor plan. And once they visually see their bedroom, okay, so I can get the 2 chests of drawers and a bedside table and it's got a fitted wardrobe in. Okay, that's what I'm taking from the bedroom. So the 3 spare bedrooms and all of the bedding and all of that goes on the inventory that is not being taken.
Right. And that also makes perfect sense, of course. And but I can still see people are people. And even though you're saying that with the best of intentions and putting a very positive spin on things, which is the right way to go, that you're still going to get resistance. So how do you then deal with that resistance? Is it something that does the stuff go with them to the property and then they realize it themselves, and then there's a kind of second phase of decluttering? So how do you deal with the resistance that may come?
When there is resistance, then yes, it's a question of saying, if it was something smallish, like even down to a chair, and I would be like, right, well, I don't think it's going to fit and be easy to walk around, or I just don't think it's going to fit. However, you are going to be opening your doors and, it will be okay. I just think it's going to be tight. So something like that, I will always say, I would rather you take it and then you decide when you're there. But if it's down to, I had same lady actually, about the 3 sofas, and the removal team phoned me the next day and they just said, Jo, it's propped up on its side because it would not fit. And so I let the retirement place know that, she would then need to get house clearance out to take this old sofa because it was not safe. But sometimes they have to decide that themselves. I will create the furniture in the floor plan and I will then just drag it out of the plan to say, if you would like to take that, that's great. Where do you see this going? Because if they can then realize themselves that it's actually not physically going to fit, then that becomes a little bit easier then.
I think the problem is as well, though, for a lot of people, Jo, is we as professional organisers and many other people out there have got a good idea and can visualize spaces, in situ. So we can walk into a room and we can see where there are potential problems. We can see where there is storage lacking. We can see where things have not been optimized or furniture is too big. But many people can't. And that's the problem, is that it's not that easy for everybody to visualize, and particularly we talk a lot about clutter blindness and things like that. And if people have seen these things in their rooms and things like that for a long time, it can be hard to make that mental shift, can't it? Because we've just not got the tools to be able to do that.
Oh.
So it is an emotional wrench. It is difficult. It will be easier if you've got someone alongside you that's a professional. I think that it's important to talk about, what do you do if you can't have a professional and you have got your son or daughter? What steps would you take? I mean, for me, it's very much about opening up a conversation, and it's all about the communication, isn't it? Whether it's a downsize, whether it's all of those things. We deal with family quite a lot in any kind of decluttering situation, and it can become difficult because of there may be resentment built up. Families are doing what they do with exactly for the right reasons all of the time. But there's so much history that goes along with that. So if someone was about to think, right, I need to downsize myself, I'm going to downsize from a 4-bedroom property into a 2-bedroom flat, how do they go about that themselves?
So yes, I've written a blog on that. It's on my website actually, about how to downsize. And just another thing as well is I have a free ebook, and this is actually about starting the conversation. So just as you were saying, how to the 5 hurdles, the 5 big hurdles, and how to overcome them. So it's the reasons that they might not want to downsize, but they need to, and just some ideas on how to overcome them.
It's all such fantastic information, Jo. But what I want to do, I want to go to a little break. And then after the break, I want to come back and talk about, what do you do if you've not got somebody like Jo to help you through this process? So welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the first part of this podcast. And now we're going to talk about, what do you do when you've not got a professional organizer to help you? How do you go through the process of downsizing to make sure that you can avoid some of the pitfalls that Jo was talking about? So Jo, how do you do that if you've not got Jo next to you? Because this is not easy. It's easy to say, we've got somebody there and you can talk about all the things. You've got the spatial awareness, all of these things. But what do you do if you're doing it alone?
So number one is I think the biggest hurdle is having the conversation with parents or elderly loved ones that you maybe need to support to move, but they have their objections against it. So I do have an ebook which is totally free, and it's all about the sort of the 5 big hurdles and then how to overcome them. So having that conversation. And then it really leads into the practical side of it. I have a blog on my website regarding this, but there's the whole process of how to help people. So number one, it is creating a floor plan, because once you start with a floor plan, and that leads to a list of the items that they are going to take with them. When my in-laws moved from a big house down by the beach in Bournemouth, and they moved to a smaller home. I say smaller home, it was still 4 bedrooms and everything. But my mother-in-law, she just famously said to me, oh, we need to downsize. The house is too big. And then I sort of was going around the house with them. And then she said, oh, but I still want the same number of rooms, the same size. And I'm like, it's not really downsizing, is it? We got to take less things. So it creates like an inventory of then the items that you are not going to take with you, because you already then know what you are going to take with you. And a huge thing that I always say to people is, once you know, so say, for example, you are going to be taking a bookcase that has, drawers at the bottom and then shelves at the top, or a display cabinet or something, something like that, is if it's currently full of 80 crystal glasses that aren't used or have been used, but they're just in there to display, but you've also got a built-in bookcase that has books that you're wanting to take with you, then it's a question of, right, let's get the glasses out. Let's keep 4 glasses that are your favorite glasses, or 2 of each, something like that. And then pack those up to get to auction house or charity. And then let's fill the item that you are taking with you with items from your home that you want to take. And then they have a place to go. My thing that I will always say to people is, where is that going to go? And that just starts this conversation. You're constantly thinking, go, where is this going to go? Have a look at the new kitchen. Do you need 10 Pyrex dishes? Can you fit them in your new lifestyle, which maybe isn't going to be hosting for, the family of 10 people? So it triggers that. So then it goes on to the inventory, and then the lead through to that is what can go to auction house, as in can make you some money. What will your buyer maybe be prepared to buy from you or have from you that saves you disposing of it, i.e. fridge freezers, the white goods, garden machinery, anything like that. Then it goes to charity, because they will come and collect. Loads of charities do these amazing things, and as long as you've got enough notice, they'll come and collect them. And then my last resort is house clearance, because that is chargeable. But things like that aren't haven't got fire labels on, old mattresses, or items in an attic, or in a garage. But just do be prepared that house clearance is an emotional thing, and I would never ever recommend that the client is there when house clearance are going in, especially if we're talking about downsizing. But this is also linked, the whole process of this is linked with people that are selling a family home after a bereavement.
Yes.
And I know of this, sadly, firsthand. I lost both my parents within 2 years of each other, and during just a minor pandemic, had to sell my family home with no charity shops open. And literally my heart was broken. And I was told by this amazing gentleman, the house clearance guy, just not to be there. And so I didn't get to actually see it. And that stayed with me for every client that I see. I just know you do not want to see something that you have used and loved, going out with house clearance, because charities won't take it.
Well, first of all, Jo, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. Losing 2 parents and a pandemic in such short proximity is really hard. And, obviously that was your job to go through that because you were a professional. But just to know that even you found that house clearance side of things very difficult as well, because this is something that you're very, very used to. And so that's really, really good advice. I want to kind of unpick a couple of things that you talked about, really. So which really resonated with me, which was you're talking about using the floor plan as a kind of guide and saying, okay, so in principle, this furniture is going with you, this dresser or this shelf unit or whatever is going with you. So what we need to do is we need to take the things that are going to fit into that unit, and we need to make sure that we have disposed of the things that we're no longer wanting and make sure that they fit in the shelf unit. And so I think that's a really good piece of advice as well. So it's not just imagining that something might fit. You actually have to do the work in the almost like a jigsaw puzzle and go, is this actually going to fit in the new property? So you have to almost reinstate it as it's going to be in the new house, in the old house before you move. I'm understanding that right, yeah?
Absolutely. People, are leaving built-in units and saying, well, I'm taking all of those books. And I'm like, fantastic. Where are they going to go?
Yeah.
Are you having built-in units, fitted in your new apartment or your new home? And if so, then we'll mark up all of these books to be stored somewhere else until you have that. Otherwise, you're going to have 20 boxes that you can't unpack because there is nowhere for them to go. So it's always thinking ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's a very similar principle to what we spoke about many times on the podcast before about when people get a new kitchen or when people get new wardrobes fitted is, look at each individual component, each individual drawer or cupboard and go, what's going to fit in that? What have I got at the moment? How many glasses have I got? How many shelves of glasses have I got? And where is that going to fit in the new configuration if you completely change it? Because many people completely change the configuration of their kitchens when they're getting them refitted. And so it's really important to think about that's where it goes down to quite a granular detail of organization and trying to get, it is like a jigsaw puzzle, isn't it, Jo, to try and get everything to fit in. So I think that's really, really helpful. And then to go down that route of, right, okay, so we're going to go for kind of making money out of the stuff if there's anything, that's worth having, like auction houses and all that kind of stuff, or selling it on eBay or Vinted or whatever. And then your next level was, remind me.
So the buyer as well.
Oh, yes.
I had a gentleman had a sort of small bungalow, and it was this huge corner plot, and he had a ride-on mower, 2 lawn mowers, garden bench, garden set and everything. And he was kind of like, well, I don't know what to do with all of this. So I contacted the estate agent on his behalf and said, is the buyer interested? And I think he got, hundreds of pounds to be able to leave everything. My client was happy and I was over the moon because that was like tick, 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 done. As long as it goes to a solicitor because money is changing hands, then, but because it went through the agent, the estate agent, then it was sorted. So it's always worth asking the buyer, white goods. A lot of times clients will just say to me, oh, I was just going to leave that. I'm like, no, you can't just leave items because that can come back to sort of bite you. Yeah. It has to be agreed that is being left. You can't just leave it.
Yeah, the principles are exactly the same right across the world in terms of the way this works, but just in the States, and I'm pretty sure Canada, then there are other things that, we've got estate sales which don't typically happen here in the UK. We've got garage sales. Here we have car boot sales, which we kind of, as professional organisers, try and avoid a little bit if possible. But I think a garage sale is a different beast entirely because that's on your property and that's much more straightforward and you can run it out of your garage, obviously. And so just to add into the mix that's going to be a possibility in other areas of the world, but we typically don't do those kind of things here in the UK. I want to talk about move days. We talked a lot about the sort of planning side of things and floor plan, trying to make things fit. We've talked about the emotional side of things. We've talked about the family side of things, which all of these things are probably 80% of the actual move, to be fair. And then we've got the practicalities. You talked before about house clearance. You talked about the movers. So how does the day go? How does the actual move day go when you're helping somebody to downsize?
So once you've got removal surveys, you're going to get an idea of the timescales. And also, of course, we have to know in the UK whether it's waiting for completion. There's no point being ready at 9 a.m. if you can't actually get in until, 2 p.m. I literally last week spent 3 hours sat on someone's driveway because they booked me from a certain time and they didn't complete for 3 more hours. So, you have to be aware of the timescales. And every single case is, it can be different. So if it's a big move, I would recommend either a hotel or, a guest suite if it's a retirement apartment, just to, protect the person. If we're not getting in till 2:00, then, in 3 hours, I can always get like a bed made and a bathroom sorted and majority of the kitchen unpacked. But apart from that, it can take sort of 8 hours to unpack into, an average, 1-2 bed apartment or a smaller home. So it's prioritizing, what the timings are, where the person's going to be, lots and lots and lots of top tips. I mean, take anything valuable with you, take medication, ideally get your bedding stripped, have clean bedding ready to go, that it goes in their car or my car, so that when I get there and then the bed is ready, is unloaded, and you're looking at, 30 boxes piled up and going, brilliant, which one's the bedding in, for the bed. So have that kind of all ready, but just allow a lot of time. I cannot tell you, a kitchen takes so long to unpack when it's been packed by removal companies, because there is so much paper involved.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it really does. It takes a long time. And just jumping back slightly, we're talking about planning everything. A kitchen is a huge thing to plan. And you were mentioning that as well, Leslie. But I would always either have photographs or a video of the kitchen, and I do a plan or post it. I'm 5'7" and right-handed. If I'm unpacking someone who's 5'3" and left-handed, their kitchen is going to be very different to how they want it. But I always emphasize, this is your kitchen. Where do you want your kettle? Where do you want your glasses and mugs? And sometimes people will just say, oh, just put it wherever, I'll change it round. The work involved in taking tea mugs and glasses out and then moving it, like I always say, plan it in advance so that you really know. And that, of course, does help trigger the decluttering process, because you might have 60 mugs now, which 10 of them are sentimental. Well, they'll say 60 are sentimental, but probably 10 are sentimental. But there's only one shelf for them. So, where are they going to go? Plan a mug tree to have out on the counter, that kind of thing. But so just then when you come to unpack a kitchen, already have an idea of where it's going to go. Everything else really, if your kitchen and bathroom are mainly your bed are okay, then everything can then wait till another day, or if you've got more family support coming in.
Yeah, and so obviously, Jo, you've already mentioned before, you've got an ebook about downsizing, you've got a blog about downsizing. I want to also highlight that we've got a moving house checklist, which is for general house moving, which has got all of the things that you need to do. And we also did a moving house podcast as well back in the day. We'll link all of these in the show notes, because some great ideas, some of the similar things to what Jo's been mentioning as well, things to think about. But more than anything, I think that there's an additional. We talked at the front end of the podcast that, moving house is one of the most stressful things, still up there in the top 3 of the most stressful things that you ever do. And that is absolutely the truth. But once you start to you add into that you're not upsizing and starting your life. And there's this element of, for some people, that it's a negative thing or something that they don't necessarily want, or something that they know they have to do, but they're not quite ready. It really does add a lot of emotional turmoil into the thing. And so if you can get somebody else to help you along that process, to support you through it, then it's so, so important. Take yourself out of that. If you can get somebody to unpack, if you can get family to unpack kitchen cupboards for you, do it. And yeah, if it needs a little bit of tweaking, even though it does take time, but don't be involved in every step of the process if you can avoid it, because it's so emotionally draining, isn't it, Jo? These are the hardest days that we do as professional organisers as well, aren't they, Jo? We go in, we can declutter and organise homes all day long, but a house move is a long, laborious, hard day emotionally and physically for us, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's just so emotional for them, depending on their journey, but it's still a wrench. If they've left a long-term family home, that is a wrench. I always help them on move day and sort of say, do you want to be the last to leave? Do you want to be the, walk around your home? Have we got photographs? We're taking all the memories with us. Do you want me to go drop the key off? Or sometimes they want to be the one to leave, and I will then whiz the vacuum cleaner around, and then I go do the key, it's really protecting them. If clients are moving to like a retirement apartment, then normally they're amazing and they will then invite them, somewhere to go and, have tea and cake, and other residents will come and see them. And I love that side of it, because then when they come back in, it already then looks like their home, because it is their items that they've already chosen to go in. And if they're involved in a lot of the process, like where's the kitchen, how the kitchen is going to be, or, where their bed is going to be, then they then see that. And then it's like that positive aspect of the move, rather than, oh, it's so sad you've left your home. It's always the positive of the move, and then less maintenance. And look at the lovely garden you can now see from your window without any maintenance whatsoever that you've now got to do. So
yeah, and I think that's where I'd like to finish, really, Jo, because we've talked about that it is difficult, and we need to respect that it's a difficult process for many people, but it's a really positive process after it. And so I don't know anybody, whether that's my father-in-law, my dad, the many, many clients that I've worked with that have downsized into a smaller home or into a retirement property, that have regretted that move, because it's been the right time for them to do that. And as we talk about with standard decluttering, things have to be right for you and your current lifestyle. Everything that we're doing in the decluttering organizing world is all about what we're doing to represent the life that we want to lead today. And downsizing into a smaller property fulfills that in many, many ways. So whilst we've said it's difficult, and we've talked about all the pitfalls and how hard it is and how emotionally wrenching, honestly, it's a really, really positive move for so many people, and one that people like me, people like Jo, who does much more of this every day, absolutely love to be involved in, being a part of that next step on someone's life. So, Jo, thank you so much. It's been amazing chatting to you, as always. We could talk all day, as always. And but yeah, I just wanted, is there anything else you want to add, Jo, before we go?
No, as I say earlier, I just mentioned about if it's due to bereavement, it is still the same process. It's just it can be even more of a wrench to really recognize that. But then the positive of that is that's the end of that chapter, and then normally they're benefiting with some income, and so it would then be positive about what they can do with that. But it's still the same steps, just not going to a new home, sadly. But no, it's been lovely. I totally and utterly agree. I've moved hundreds of people into retirement apartments or downsized into smaller homes, and I often go back and see them, and not once has anyone regretted it. And normally they're just so busy, they're out and about in a whole new community and just absolutely loving it. So I think it's fantastic. It's hard to make that leap and to think it's just so overwhelming, but actually when it's broken down into stages, it's totally and utterly doable, and it's all for the right reasons. So I absolutely love what I do. I love being able to support people through this stage of their lives.
Fantastic. So before we go as well, Jo does not just do downsizing, she does some really cool stuff, and Jo's got an incredible social media. So she gives fantastic hints and tips on Instagram. She's got a fantastic Facebook page. She's got a brand new group. So there's loads of great stuff on Jo's socials, which we're going to link to. Obviously, she's talked already about her ebook. She's talked about her blog. So do go and take a look, because it's not just, even if you're not thinking about downsizing, Jo is a fantastic person to follow. I learn something new every day when I follow and think, why did we not think of that? But anyway, on that thing, we're going to put all that into the show notes. So Jo, in a nutshell, tell us the best place for people to find you.
So best place is benella.co.uk. It's Ben. Ben is my son and Ella is my daughter. So benella.co.uk, and everything is on there for links.
Perfect. So listeners, are you thinking about downsizing, and has this podcast helped you to get your head around what to expect? We would love to hear from you in the comments, in our Facebook group, on YouTube. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to the Declutter Hub podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us in your podcast player so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.